Hello and welcome. Whether it's morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are, you're very welcome to attend Ask an Atheist. And my guest tonight is a YouTuber who goes under the name of Buzz Bates. Buzz, how the devil are you?
I'm very well, John. How are you this evening?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
Yes. So I've got a number of questions to ask before any of our audience get a chance, because once they start sending comments and questions in, I might not have that opportunity.
Okay.
So the first thing I'd like to ask you is, how did you get to be who you are today, the atheist?
Okay, yeah. I'll try and give a condensed and simple explanation of that. My background is Roman Catholic. Although I always state that nobody's born a Roman Catholic or born a Jew or born a Muslim. I was born into a Roman Catholic family. I was brought up, educated within a Roman Catholic school. And I must confess that I wasn't very good as a student at my particular school until I got to about the age of about 15. And when I got to about the age of 15, I began to make some new friends. My life was starting to change then. But I came across a book. And this book talked about evolution. And it talked about a species called Australopithecus afarensis. And I remember being in a religious class, and the priest, because I was normally taught by either nuns or priests, and the priest was talking about Adam and Eve. And I put my hand up and I said to the priest, you know, I've got a question to ask. You talk about Adam and Eve, but I've been reading these other things which state that we didn't come from Adam and Eve, that we came from a thing called an Australopithecus. Can you please explain? And the priest became very angry and became very aggressive. And because of that anger and because of that aggression, I realized that perhaps I wasn't being told the full truth. And from that point onwards, I began to discover more and more about who we are, what we are, blah, blah, etc.
Yeah, so you hit up against science, didn't you? Which is always death to religion.
Yes, in my case.
Lately, you've targeted Kent Hovind. You've been debunking Kent in some of your videos. How did that come about? I think about 18 months ago, actually probably more like 2 years ago now, I was on YouTube and I came across Kent Hovind videos, and I was appalled, literally appalled by some of the things that he was saying. And it was, well, basically, I felt as though he was providing misinformation, that he was lying. As I became more aware of who Kent Hovind was, I became aware of the fact that he was taking money from people. And in many respects, I kind of view him, as far as young creationists are concerned, as the Donald Trump of young creationism. And for me personally, I think education is important, and the correct teaching is important. And I felt as though Kent Hovind was doing a disservice to young people. So I started looking at his videos and some of the things he was saying, and I decided to put together my own videos, which debunked each one of the points that he was trying to make within his videos. Now, I'm not doing anything which is unique or which is original. I know that there are a lot of people out there doing the same thing as me, but I would like to sort of put my voice to this particular argument. Yeah, we've all had to come to grips with video making, live streaming, Zooming since COVID. COVID. I'm getting mixed up between Kent and COVID.
Yes, yes. With Kent, you can actually swap that K for a C and produce another word from time to time. Yes.
So
would you like to go through some of your objections to Kent's videos? Shall I put something up for you?
You can if you wish, certainly.
Here we go. Let me just get that to play.
Can you show me two created kinds that science would consider to be in the same clade? Can you? It's just yes or no. Yeah, can you do it?
I think elephants, let's assume elephants and mammoths.
It's not a yes and it's not a no. Can we take that as a no?
What color is the sky? Yes or no? Come on, you moron.
Calling me a moron will not hide your own willful ignorance of this subject.
As you can see from that last clip, the scientist, Aaron Ra, attempted to get Hovind to define what a kind is. Hovind refused to do this, and he used an avoidance strategy. However, Aaron wasn't prepared to let Hovind avoid this particular question. Hovind became angry, he became frustrated, and he ended up calling Aaron a moron. A rather immature response.
Yeah, we meet that, don't we? And to be honest, it happens on both sides of the fence.
It does.
It's so easy when frustrated with an opponent's inability to understand. It's so easy to slip into an ad hominem. So
yeah, I mean, but there are two things there with Aaron. Actually, you said to me earlier on, Aaron likes to be known as, is it Aaron?
Aaron, that's right.
Aaron. Yeah, Aaron. So with Aaron, Ken Hovind, he basically has used a script for over 20 years within his debates. I mean, you've got thousands of Ken Hovind debates on YouTube, but he actually reads from a script which hasn't changed in 20 years. And with someone like...
Sounds like a scripture.
Yes, absolutely. But with Aaron wasn't allowing Kent to avoid the question. And the question was basically about defining kinds. And this is an issue for a lot of creationists, okay? And there's a reason why it's an issue. To define kinds means possibly opening a can of worms for them, okay, in relation to evolutionary biology. In the book of Genesis, it states, and God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind.
Yes.
Which, as far as the creationists are concerned, means that each kind will produce the same kind. And for Kent Hovind, when this question is put to him, his first line of defense is always to say, have you ever seen a dog produce anything other than a dog?
Yeah.
Okay. So he'll go down that line first. If that doesn't work for him, okay, he'll then start making comparisons, saying, well, you know, you're obviously believing that you think that a frog and a pine tree are related. If that doesn't work for him, he'll then go down the other line of saying that he doesn't want his tax dollars to pay for this fairy tale nonsense. Now, with the clip of film that you've just seen, Aaron was not allowing Kent to avoid the question. So Kent became incredibly frustrated, incredibly angry, and therefore you saw that particular outburst where he referred to Aaron as a moron. Yeah.
Well, the problem for them is they want kinds to be fixed and unchangeable. And the reality is anything but. In fact, the biological equivalent to kind, of course, is species. And it's very difficult to define a species because they aren't fixed. They do sometimes interbreed, make hybrids, and sometimes those hybrids are fertile. So we've then got a new kind, if you like. And it goes against their doctrine, their script, their scripture.
Yeah, I mean, and you're quite right, John. I mean, if you went back to the 19th century,
and spoke to somebody who was religious at that particular time, they would never, ever, ever have conceived the possibility that a small domesticated dog could have been possibly related to an extinct wolf-like creature. Okay, but obviously 21st century genetics now proves that the ancestor of a little pug dog is now an extinct wild wolf creature. So they've had to change the way they think about things, and so they now accept variations within a species. Okay, and dogs is a good example of that, I guess. But this is the problem for them. You know, as I state in the book of Genesis, a kind will always produce the same kind. Okay, but take the horse and the donkey. All right, the horse and the donkey will produce a mule. All right, but the mule is infertile, so therefore the mule cannot produce kind.
More mule.
Yeah. Or you can take it even further and take, for example, there are two frogs. Tree frogs from Northeast America. What are their names? A Hyla veriscolor and a Hyla chrysalis, I think their names are. They're basically identical in so many different ways. The only way you can actually tell them apart is they have slightly different mating calls.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's the only way you can tell them apart. Otherwise, they are exactly the same. But one of the frogs is a polyploid of the other. Okay, so a chromosomal abnormality has produced these two particular frogs. What that means is that they cannot produce any fertile young. They're the same, but they cannot produce a kind to take on as their particular offspring. And you know, Hovind might like to lump the frogs together as a variation within a species, as he does with dogs. But unfortunately, he can't. And so once again, you know, you have a situation where creationists then have to change the way they think about things. And now there are a number of young Earth creationists who say, okay, well, let's look at morphology. You know, we'll kind of dispose of the interbreeding thing maybe and look at morphology. And okay, so if you start doing that, you open up another can of worms, because, for example, young Earth creationists will look at dinosaurs as the same kind. Obviously, variation within that particular species. But they won't actually look at a gorilla and a chimpanzee as the same kind, despite the fact the morphology is very similar, and despite the fact there's a 95% DNA similarity between them. And the reason they won't do that is because if once they open that can of worms, they have to say, well, the closest, you know, living organism to Homo sapiens is the chimpanzee. So are we of the same kind? And this is why Kent Hovind will continually avoid defining what a kind is.
Yes, he certainly doesn't want to lump humans in with the animal kingdom. They like to have this big discontinuity that we're the chosen kind by their God, and that the animals, a big gap, you know, the animals are much more lowly and we have dominion over them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, for them, it's important to actually view kinds as being separate and unrelated. But the problem, again, which obviously they are now encountering with modern science, is genetics. The fact that we have, you know, the genetic code, which relates all living organisms. And the fact we understand that all living organisms, be it animal or plant, are eukaryotic cells.
Yes. Yes. But they don't, then they're inflexible, that the style of thinking is very conservative. They don't want change to happen in their mind. They like their existing doctrine and they want to stick to it. And it's interesting that very often they're politically conservative too.
Yeah, I think that's very much true in I may cause some controversy here, but certainly in America, and certainly in the southern states, the Bible Belt.
Yes, indeed. So Stephen R.A. Fleming here says, well, that's a shame because evolution is perfectly compatible with Catholicism.
Yes. Yes, and you know, with Stephen, I'd have to say, yes, Catholicism has actually accepted evolution. We know that, okay?
Yes.
They don't deny evolution. Hovind actually denies Catholicism.
Yes, not proper Christians.
They're not proper Christians. But I mean, you know, Catholicism took a long time to get to where it is. If you go back to, say, Copernicus, okay, when Copernicus realized that the Earth wasn't at the center of the known universe, you then had Galileo supporting that. And look what happened to Galileo. You know, I think it was 1982 before the Catholic Church forgave him.
Well, yes. I think actually what they did, I can't remember the details of this, but I believe they accepted that he was right hundreds of years ago, and then took about another 300 years to actually apologize for what they did to him.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. But yes. But I mean, yeah, the Catholic Church, thankfully, does accept it. And you know, this is the thing that I have about it, John. You can have a religious belief and still accept evolution. Okay, I'm not going to say believe in evolution, because that's what Ken Hovind likes to try to do. He likes to try and even the playing ground and describing evolutionary biology as a religion. It's not a religion. No. And you can accept evolutionary biology, but still have a religion. For example, you and I, John, the other day were speaking, and it is a fact there are hypotheses about how the universe started. Okay, but we still don't really have the answer.
Well, I would say that's one of the few places in science where belief can be applied. Most of science is a mountain of known information based on evidence. And I would contend that once it's got to the solidity of a theory that is unlikely to be overturned, you don't need to believe it actively. It's just too strong a fact for you to have to wonder, to consider, shall I believe this or not? You know, it would be like standing at the upstairs window and wondering whether it would be a good idea to jump out.
Yes. Yes.
But at the frontiers of science, like you said, at the origin of the universe, it's okay to believe whichever hypothesis you favor in that situation, because we just genuinely don't know.
And we may never know. The fact is this, okay? I've come across some creationists who have said to me, but you don't have all the answers. No, we don't. We probably never will have all the answers, okay? As a species, we've been around, I mean, John, you and I accept that we've been around for 250,000 years. Young Earth creationists think it's only been 6,000 years. Yeah. But in respect of our species, and when we become extinct ourselves, we will probably become extinct and not have all the answers to the questions which are now being posed to us.
Who knows? Yes, indeed. Well, Stephen's given us another bit of information here. The Catholic Church leads science in many areas. Well, I'd like, give us a citation for that, Stephen, can you? And he's having a go at the Big Bang concept. Yes, it was floated by a Catholic priest. You're right there. Yes, but only as an idea. At that time, there was no evidence to suggest that it was likely to be true, which, of course, now there is. Okay, so would you like me to screen a little bit more of that Kent Hovind video?
You can if you wish.
Okay, here we go.
But if Aaron is a moron, according to Hovind, then Aaron is in good company. Because Hovind is also called one of the greatest scientists in history a moron. Watch this clip.
But what do you mean teaching me basic science? What would he like to What would he like to teach me? Tell him, go ahead, schedule a debate. We'll take him on next. James, get his number. You call him. You do host most of the debates here, so have another one tomorrow.
If I could just touch on that, what I would like to do, Ken, is I'd like you to learn the word of what science even means, because Darwin's theory of evolution has been considered one of the most enlightening things that man has figured out. I forget the exact words that they use, but his realization of what we got going on here with the divergence of animals is considered one of the biggest scientific discoveries of all time. So if that's not science, I don't know what is.
I'm sure you don't know what is, because that is not science.
Well, I'm just telling you what he's considered. His insight into the evolution of man and animals was considered
right.
One of the
I would consider Darwin a moron.
Yes, indeed. A man.
Stop there, John, for a second. Sorry.
His understanding of science.
Darwin is a moron.
So, and this is the thing, okay? Kent Hovind, okay, is obviously disrespecting one of the greatest scientists that ever lived. And for those who are unaware, and I'm going to perhaps educate you perhaps a little bit now regarding Kent Hovind. Kent Hovind does not have any science qualifications whatsoever, okay? It's important that you know that. He has a master's degree from a Patriot University, which is a unaccredited university in America, and his degree is in Christian education, and it was a correspondence course. So the doctorate was by mail order. Now, when you view Kent Hovind debates on YouTube, he will tell you that he has taught science for 15 years or something like this. But these are the facts. He's only ever taught at 3 private Christian schools, okay, from the back of a church, okay? He's never actually taught in an actual proper school. At no point did Hovind earn any recognized credentials that would allow him to teach at public schools or any schools that requires accreditation. He states that he taught science. I would love to have been part of his science classes.
And another thing is that the theists tend to think of evolution as an isolated little field that they can attack, and it won't sort of bring down the entire house of cards of science. But the truth is that it's not an isolated field. It underpins pretty much everything else biological, including medicine. So I wonder if Kent Hovind's had his COVID vaccine.
I think Donald Trump has.
Yes, I'm sure he has. Yeah.
Despite the fact that Donald and Kent share one thing, that they deny the science.
Yes. Well,
but I mean, what you're just saying there, John, just taking up on what you're just saying, you know, we've been focused a little bit on the evolutionary biology side of it, okay? But in actual fact, you're quite right. Other science disciplines support evolutionary biology. And if you were to watch Kent Hovind debates, and we're not going to have enough time tonight to show all the clips in respect of my rebuttal of him, but in some of the clips that we may not be able to have time to see, you'll notice Kent Hovind talking about, say, carbon-14, okay, dating methods, which is in the science of geology, okay? And Kent Hovind had a debate with Bill Ludlow. And in that debate, Kent talked about actually dating living organisms. He didn't realize that the organism has to be dead. We have to look at the radioactive decay before we can actually make an assessment of the age of that particular specimen. I'm
not surprised that he talked about carbon-14, because a lot of theists do. And they think that it substantiates their claims because it's wrong, in their view, for older fossils. And that's simply because carbon-14 half-life is too short. It's very good for dating archaeological remains, you know, things within the span of human existence on this planet, pottery and bricks and fire ashes and things like that. It's very good. But for paleontology, we need other radioisotopes, including uranium and radon. Well, indeed we do, yes. And not only that, but we can cross-correlate. We don't just use one marker, we use 2 or 3 different radioisotopes, and they each give us a slightly different estimate, but we can combine them and form a better indication of the age of a fossil.
Precisely. And but unless you actually understand the processes which are actually applied to the dating methods, okay, you shouldn't really be speaking about them. But unfortunately, Kent Hovind likes to speak about science in areas that he has actually no understanding. I mean, there was another debate, which is one of my clips, where Kent Hovind goes up against a gentleman, goes under them conspiracy cats, and conspiracy cats asked Kent what he knows about allele frequencies. Now, this is basic biology, but Kent could not give a definition or an understanding of what an allele frequency is. Okay, he didn't understand this, yet he's taught science, he states, at school. Another wonderful clip, which we may or may not have time to show, is he went up against an individual who looked at the speed of light. And Kent viewed the speed of light as a measurement of distance rather than having anything to do with time.
I've seen that one, yes.
Oh, you've seen that one. And another thing, I mean, you know, Kent gets it wrong so many times. I mean, hyena. I've seen Kent in a debate talking about hyena as being a wild dog.
Yes.
Not realising part of the cat family.
Yes. Well, there you go. And that's the trouble. They come from a position of so much ignorance, and they don't like it to be exposed. Stephen here says, I don't know where you are, Stephen. Thank you for watching, but maybe I should ask our viewers to put their locations in the comment stream. But faith and reason can coexist, Stephen says. What do you think?
Yeah, I've got absolutely no issue with that at all. Again, going back to what we said earlier on, John, we don't have the answers to everything, okay? In respect of my acceptance, and I will use the word acceptance of evolutionary biology, for me, it starts from when the first cell replicated. It's the process, okay? Now, what came before that?
Who knows?
I haven't got an answer. So faith and reason, yeah.
Well, I'm a bit more astringent than you, I think, because I don't rate faith at all. I think there's 3 words which tend to get mixed up here. There's confidence, trust, and faith. And I think that confidence should be used as it is in statistics for an empirical, quantifiable measure. So, for example, we can say that flying by air, no, how else would you fly? Traveling by air is the safest means of travel, because only one person gets killed in so many million miles travel. Yet traveling by motorcycle is a very dangerous means of travel, because 8 people get killed for every million miles traveled. And those measures are measures of confidence. So that's how I would like to see that word used for numbers. Then there's trust, which is, you know, I trust that my partner won't go off with somebody else, that sort of a thing, which is not something you can put numbers on, but it's based on a reputation. So there's a qualifiable justification for it. And when you come to faith, I would say it's neither of those. It's an irrational plumping for a favorite idea. Maybe that's just my view.
Well, I mean, faith again, you know, if we're talking about faith in a supernatural being, I guess one of the issues I have about that is in relation to and Ken Hovind is a good example of this, of saying that what he believes in is the only thing you can believe in. Oh, Stephen's from Birmingham. Hello, from Birmingham. Is there anything you can believe in? But you and I both know that if you were born in Connemara, the west coast of Ireland, the chances are you're going to be brought up like me, a Roman Catholic. If you were born in Baghdad, the chances are you're going to be brought up a Muslim. If you were born in India, possibly a Hindu.
Yes.
The Bible Belt of America, you know. So geography,
yes,
and peer influence has quite a lot to do with our faith in the supernatural.
Yes, yes. I like to think that we're all born without a faith. So we're all effectively born atheists.
Oh, we are, yeah.
After all, we're born with eyes that we can't interpret properly. It takes a few weeks before the brain can decode the signals coming from the eye and see in focus. So if we can't do that when we're born, it's unlikely that we can make a decision about some scriptural doctrine that we prefer compared to all of the others.
Yes, yes.
So
yes.
I would say that we're born as atheists, and what happens is somebody gets to us, and it's a case of who's the first person to get to us, whether it's a priest, a mullah, a pastor, or some other clerical personage. So you're right, it's an accident of birth. A geographical accident of birth. Stephen was in Birmingham, so I don't know what he's been indoctrinated with in Birmingham.
I'm going to make an assumption that perhaps Catholicism plays quite a large role in Stephen's life. I don't know, but that is an assumption.
Let me just say that Birmingham's a lovely place. I thoroughly enjoy visiting it, and it's got some fantastic Indian restaurants. It's the origin of the, what dish is it? Not the boona. The I can't remember. One of the Indian dishes was actually invented in Birmingham.
Did ELO come from Birmingham as well?
Yes, yes, I believe they did. Yes, and they're a very good band too.
Yes, they were a good Beatles tribute band.
Well, I'll tell them you said that. Mike Peacock, I don't know where you're from, Mike, but you tell us that the Abrahamic creation myth should need no more debunking than the myth that Atom masturbated the universe into existence or any other mythology. Well, I'm not sure how that's raised the tone of the conversation, but there.
I mean, actually, we haven't got time to go into it tonight, obviously, John, but the Abraham religion, you know, if you look at the origins of it from the Sumerian civilization onwards, it's an interesting topic to actually delve into and find out where the myth, the flood myths, etc., come from as well.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, Abraham's got a lot to answer for because he started 3 religions effectively.
Yeah, and of course, again, we don't know whether Abraham actually really existed. There's no evidence for him.
No. And Moses is extremely dubious.
Yes.
So, according to Mike, it's the various faiths that have a problem coexisting to the point where they usually end up killing each other. You're so right, Mike. You're so right.
Yeah, you know, Mike makes a good point, but one of the things that Creationists saying, Kent Hovind says this as well, is that atheism was behind Adolf Hitler. So they tried to reboot that by saying, you know, but in actual facts, was atheism the reason why Hitler or Stalin did the things that they did? I don't think so.
No. They were megalomaniacs, let's face it. They did things for their own personal gain. But Hitler actually cuddled up to the Catholics.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that one of the problems that people like Kent Hovind has is that evolution is so counterintuitive. You know, we don't with the large obvious creatures, we don't see it happening. It happens in periods of time that are beyond human lifetimes, and therefore beyond our experience, and that's a problem for them. And they tend not to like evidence which is not direct, or evidence at all. Come to that, they much prefer stories.
Well, you're talking about observational evidence.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the fact is, we don't observe Pluto orbiting the sun within a human lifespan.
No, we don't.
But we know it happens because we have the data. We have the evidence there, and that same principle applies to evolutionary biology.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Yes, I like to say that we can observe evolution happening in creatures that have a short lifespan, and I've got an example of that here. I'm just about to share. This is actual observable evolution of.
So what we ended up building was basically a
bacteria,
petri dish, except that it's 2 feet by 4 feet. And the way we set it up is that there are 9 bands, and at the base of each of these bands, we put a normal petri dish thick agar with different amounts of antibiotic. On the outside, there's no antibiotic. Just in from that, there's barely more than the E. coli can survive. Inside of that, there's 10 times as much, 100 times, and then finally the middle band has 1,000 times as much antibiotic. And then across the top of it, pour some thin agar that bacteria can move around in. The background is black because there's ink in it, and the bacteria appear as white. First, you see they spread in the area where there's no antibiotic up until the point they can no longer survive. Then a mutant appears on the right. It's resistant to the antibiotic. It spreads until it starts to compete with other mutants around it. When these mutants hit the next boundary, they too have to pause and develop new mutations to make it into 10 times as much antibiotic. And then you see the different mutants repeat this at 100. And after about 11 days, they finally make it into 1,000 times as much antibiotic as the wild type can survive. And so we can see by this process of accumulating successive mutations that bacteria, which are normally sensitive to an antibiotic, can evolve resistance to extremely high concentrations in a short period of time.
Well, there you go. Harvard Medical School. They should know a thing or two.
What would I hope?
Yeah.
Observational.
Yes. Yes, indeed. So the thing about this is that a theist will immediately complain that they're still bacteria, and therefore no evolution has been observed, because they tend to accept what they call microevolution, but they deny what they call macroevolution, which we would call speciation. And my question to them, and I've never had an answer from any of them that I've debated, is what stops an accumulation of little bits of evolution from making a creature that's incapable of breeding with its ancestors? What's the mechanism that puts this barrier up that stops another little microevolution happening that just tips the balance and prevents it from breeding with its parents?
And you're quite correct. Microevolution, all it is the precursor to macroevolution.
Yes.
Okay. That's all it really is. And
yeah.
you know, I said earlier on, and I'll bring this back again to the issue of dogs. Okay, because Kent loves dogs. Okay, the fact is, okay, dogs are a good example of microevolution, which is the precursor to macroevolution. One of my videos, which I look at dog evolution, looks at the research which has been conducted by people such as
Dr. Amanda Pendleton and Dr. Jeffrey Kidd into neural crest cells, okay, and how neural crest cells actually impact on the evolutionary process of behavior, okay, because with the actual dog evolution, we had what scientists now state was self-domestication before natural selection took part.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You know, we completely understand artificial selection, which occurred later, but artificial selection in many ways is evolution on steroids.
Yes, yes, indeed. Yeah, you're right, because there's been some recent research published about our relationship with originally wolves, having begun more hundreds of thousands of years ago than we previously thought, possibly with, you know, not Homo sapiens, but a precursor to Homo sapiens. Because it's natural enough for one carnivorous animal to associate with a bigger carnivorous animal and pick up the scraps that they've left when they've killed something and eaten the best bits, you know?
Yes.
And once that association, they follow you around, you know, while you're doing your hunting and gathering. And once that association has been built, you notice how cute their puppies are, and you start adopting them in your house as something to cuddle. And there you go. You've got a relationship. You've got man's best friend. However, with the artificial selection of dogs that we've been doing, and we've produced so many different varieties, I wonder if we were to disappear off the face of the earth and leave the dogs to fend for themselves, would a Great Dane be able to breed with a dachshund? Eh?
Well, I mean, this is the thing. You know, a Great Dane and a little pug.
Yeah.
You know,
have we actually got speciation there in the dogs, even though theoretically they can breed together?
Well, the answer to that from someone like Kent Hovind would be an answer in genetics, in the fact that genetically it's possible, and genetically, yes, if we assist it.
Yes, yes.
You know, which is what you're saying, John. But yes, in the natural world, no.
Yes, we can do artificial insemination and all sorts of tricks, but you try and get a Great Dane to mount a dachshund or the other way around and see what happens.
That'd be interesting. But you know, I mean, the fact is, Kent or Mr. Hovind is always stating that a dog will always produce a dog, and of course, as we know in evolution, we expect that to happen. Okay, we don't expect it not to happen. But again, you know, if you watch my video on the dog evolution, the fact is that that's now extinct wolf creature, which is the ancestor of that little pug dog, didn't overnight produce that little pug dog.
No, nothing happens overnight. Well, I'll retract that. It's very rare for things to happen overnight in evolution.
Yeah.
So Mike is in Dorset, apparently. And sometimes we get watched from other countries, but apparently Dorset is as far away as we've gathered tonight. He once argued with a creationist who said that science was useless because it can't even cure the common cold. Needless to say, he didn't understand the irony of using proof of evolution to defend creationism. Well, just because we haven't yet cured the common cold doesn't mean that we won't. And if it's going to be cured, then there's one way of doing it, and that's using scientific method, not faith or praying or anything like that.
Yeah, and as I said earlier on, John, we don't have the answers to everything.
No, we leave the claims of knowing everything to the theists. We don't make those.
Hovind.
Yeah, we don't make those claims.
But
so
I mean,
I was going to say the other problems that evolution being counterintuitive throws up for people is that most humans now live in cities, which is a made world. It's entirely made. You know, I mean, we live in houses that we've made. Outside there are roads that we've made. We're using computers that we've made. Everything is made except perhaps the weeds that might be growing in your gutter. And because of that, it's pretty natural to wonder who made nature, because making is so prevalent in our experience. And also, there's the concept of purpose. You know, everything we've made has a purpose. The houses are to provide us shelter. The cars are to drive us, or enable us to move around. The roads are for the cars to drive on. Everything has been intended. And that's an experience that theists find it hard to escape from. They expect there to be an agent, their God, nobody else's God, of course, just theirs. They expect there to be an agent to explain all the other mysteries that we don't yet know the answers to. They haven't got the explanations for yet.
Well, the issue with that, of course, again, goes back to the fact that, you know, things have got to be made and have to be created. And then another thing that Ken Hovind uses in his debate is an analogy of the car. You know, the car was made by a human. Yes. And he basically, he compares that to the evolutionary process. And this is the thing. Cars are inanimate objects. They cannot change independently, okay? Biological organisms can, they do, and we know that that is a fact.
Yes, yes. And we've only got to point to some examples of genetic defects to show that this is happening.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, one of the interesting things about genetics, I was thinking about the other day, is this argument regarding the chromosome 2. Okay, it's an argument which has been ongoing for a little while now between creationists and those in evolutionary biology. For those watching who may not know what I'm talking about, right? The fact is, with DNA. The more similarities, the greater the relatedness between two species. Okay, I think we can all accept that. We know that humans have 23 chromosomes.
Yes.
And apes have 24 chromosomes.
Yeah.
And creationists initially said, well, that just shows you that we're not the same. But this was before the beauty of genetic science showed us the fusion of chromosome 2.
Yes.
Now, chromosome 2, okay, is basically 2p and 2q, which have been, correct me if I'm wrong on this, John, because my memory, I'm getting old, fused together. So apes have 2 smaller chromosomes and humans have a large chromosome.
Yes.
Okay. So the telomeres, they're the protective caps. And the centromeres, they bond together the chromosomes, the chromosome pairs during cell division. But we now know through genetic science that a fusion took place in the evolutionary process and the divergence between humans and our ape cousins. And we now know that there are multiple subtelomere duplications. And we found the expected DNA code, which, you know, we predicted that we would find, and we found it through genetics. So, the creationists say, that, no, this is wrong. There's a functioning gene at the fusion site, and they try to argue this point. But in actual fact, the fusion sites that we're looking at is more than, I think it's 1,300 base pairs away from the gene, proving that actually this chromosome was fused, that we are related to the actual chimpanzee, as predicted in evolutionary biology.
Isn't science wonderful? Hey.
Yes. If I'm wrong in any of that, John, please do correct me. But
no, you're absolutely right. Yes, we've got 1 less chromosome than the apes, and it's because two of theirs fused to make one of ours. Yep.
Yes. Yes.
So this is when they're hung up on this, there must be a purposeful intention for changes. If they have got to the stage of accepting that changes do happen, it leads to the idea that the changes must be better, and that, you know, the next generation of elephant or whatever is a superior one that doesn't have any of the defects that their supposedly perfect creation had.
Well, I think we know that's not quite true.
So it's very difficult for them to understand that there's no intention.
No, none.
And the trouble with that is, once they do get their heads around the idea that there's no intention, they think that it's all mutation, that evolution is one huge and unlikely collection of a sequence of accidents, and that makes it ridiculous. Yeah. Well, here's the news. Mutation is not the mechanism of evolution. That's selection. Yes. And it's a whole different thing. I remember I was at a humanist meeting one time, and we had an Answers in Genesis priest come to speak to us.
An Answers in Genesis priest?
Or pastor. Must have been a pastor. Yeah. And anyway, he said that he calculated the odds against evolution coming out with solutions to, you know, the producing a human, for example. And I pointed out to him that it was like the difference between choosing one, I don't know what to say, one ball out of a bag of infinite number of balls, which is not how it's done, and that would be unlikely. And it's the alternative is like having 6 dice in your hands and throwing them with the expectation of getting 6 sixes. But you don't have to get them all at once. You throw them, you maybe get 1 6. You put that aside, you select. And then you throw them again. And you might get another 6. And it is a very small number then before you've got 6 sixes.
Yes.
It's not incredible. It's not statistically improbable or anything like that.
Or even a fairy tale.
No, indeed. So what amuses me a lot is their objections, which come in the form of questions like, were you there? You know, when we say that there's evidence in the fossils, in the paleontological strata, the geological strata, the record in the rocks, they say, were you there? Did you actually see specimen A turn into specimen B? But the answer to that is, you don't have to observe it happening. We can observe evolution happening today, like that bacterial example I screened earlier. But once you realize, and that's not the only one, by the way, there are other larger organisms that we've observed speciating. And this is not just plants, you know, there's animals that we've seen do it too. But it's not just that change happening. You don't have to observe it happening. You can see a progression over the history in the rocks and say the most likely explanation for that obvious sequence is that change also happened in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, you're talking about rocks. One of the things that the creationists have still not provided an answer for is in respect of igneous rocks. And for example, a good example is the cooling process of granite. Okay, and the cooling process and the crystallization of granite. Okay, we know that didn't happen in just a few thousand years.
No.
But they haven't got an answer for it.
No, no, indeed.
You know, I mean, they've got a supernatural answer, but their supernatural answer would mean that as far as the physical laws of nature are concerned, we would have a planet which would have no oceans. Everything would be burnt to a cinder.
Yes, yes. And that brings us to the flood. No, let's not go there. Let's not go there. No. So why are there still apes, Buzz?
Why are there still apes?
Yeah. I mean, we've superseded apes, haven't we? Shouldn't they have gone in shame because they hadn't evolved into us?
Well, again, I guess that's the thing which, unfortunately, again, if you don't understand the science, you assume that we have descended from, say, the gorilla or something like that, but we've not. We have a common ancestor. I mean, that's been proved, for example, in genetics itself, that the chimpanzee and, right, for example, I was talking a little while ago about chromosome 2. Okay, we know from genetics that both the chimpanzee and the Homo sapien share a common ancestor, which diverged several million years ago. Okay, we didn't evolve from the chimpanzee didn't evolve from us. It's a bit like the Neanderthals. Okay, the issue with the Neanderthals, a lot of creationists like to view the Neanderthals as being a deformed modern human. Okay, now we know that we have a relationship with Neanderthals and another human species, Denisovians, from about the same period, just over 50. If you went back in history 50, 60,000 years ago, Homo sapiens were not the only species, human species, walking this planet, okay? But thankfully, because of genetics, we now know that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens share a common ancestor from about 400,000 years ago, which appears to be Homo heidelbergensis. Okay, we have the fossil records, we have the genetic evidence to actually prove that. Okay, that's just a fact.
Yeah. Well, it's like saying, if you've descended from your grandfather and he's still alive, why are there still grandfathers?
Yes. Very much so. Very much so.
So there you go. Buzz, you've been fantastic, as predicted.
And observed?
Yes. Prophesied.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
And I just want to thank our small audience for watching us, and to announce that, trying to think who I've got next week. And I can't remember who I've got next week, but I do know that the week after, we've had to move from Saturday to Monday to suit our guest, because it's Harris Sultan, who is an apostate Pakistani Australian. And because of the time zone differences, I've got to do the show on Monday morning. That'll be the 22nd of, oh, that is next week, isn't it? Because we're on the 13th now. So the Saturday is the 20th, and it's shifted to Monday to suit Harris, because he's in Australia. And so it'll be 10 o'clock on Monday morning, the 22nd of March. So I hope you can join us then.
Excellent.
Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you very much, John, for having me.
Thank you for coming.